Hi everyone, welcome to Friday Fun. We're here in the preserve today and we're going to do something that's really different and fun. We're going to look in the water and we're going to find the tiniest little water life, and then we're going to talk about all the animals that eat the little ones and the bigger animals that eat those and the bigger animals that eat those and the bigger animals that eat those. It's called a food chain. And as we were walking up to the water here, there was a lot of mud. And last time we were looking at some tracks of raccoons. Well, we have tracks of geese, heron, and raccoons right here. And we're going to start by showing you some tracks. Let's have a look. So I see one here that looks pretty big, and you can kind of see the puffiness in between. And this looks like it's from a goose because these are the toes, but this is the webbing, the skin in between. And if we look around to the other side, I know we saw some raccoons. And we know that raccoons come to the water to taste their food, right? So here's one going this way and another one here and all the way to the water. And then over here we have lots and lots of worm castings. We have worms that live in the water too, and you can see how the ground looks kind of darker and kind of lumpy. The worms have brought up the soil. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get some water samples. So we came out here with a great big pole. And this pole, oops, I got some algae on there, has a cup on the end. And what we're going to do is we're going to collect some water samples. And when we collect the water samples, it's not going to look like too much. Now I look out on the water and I see some floating debris. We don't want to get the debris. We want to get an area where it's more clear because that's just dust and pollen. But I'm just going to scoop it in and bring it back. And now what I'm going to do with my little sample, I am going to pour it in this little white container, and we're going to let it settle, and we're going to see if we can see things moving. There's the green algae. That's easy to see. And you can see there's a lot of things moving in the water. And those guys that are swimming around, they're just the size of little tiny seeds. Most of those are Daphnia, and I can tell by the color. They look a little bit red. But I also see, and the Daphnia, we call them water fleas. But I also see what appears to be ostracods or seed shrimp. And these are both crustaceans. They're related to lobsters, crayfish, crabs, and shrimp. But when we take these back into the classroom, we'll have a look at them under the microscope, and I'll bet we'll be able to find even more things. So I'm going to put this water sample right into my little jar, and we're going to take it back to the microscope. We're here at a different location, and the first thing we see is a couple dragonflies. He's hovering just above the water. Follow the end of my pole. I'm getting closer to her. Oops, she's off. So our dragonfly finally landed somewhere we might be able to get some video of him or her, I'm not sure. And there's a little stick sticking up out of the water. And right perched on top of it is the dragonfly. Dragonflies' legs are not good for walking, but they're good for holding on and perching. And they're excellent flyers. They can fly just like a hummingbird, hover in one place, upside down, backwards, forwards, sidewards, I think. They're just acrobats in the air. So here's one of our dragonflies. And Miss Susan is getting closer. It's easier to see when they're staying still. When they're flying around, it's difficult to follow with the camera. You can see it has some pretty orange colors, and the wings are see-through. Kind of see the veins if the film is good enough. Oh, Miss Susan's getting a little close. I think the dragonfly's getting a little nervous. Oh, there he goes. These two are hooked together because she's going to lay eggs and he's going to help her do it. She drops her abdomen onto the water and lays eggs on the little plants and the surface of the water. Those are some dragonflies. Oh, and then the bird tried to eat it. Did you see the bird? That was great.
Let's watch it again. Let's see if she actually gets to eat a dragonfly in slow motion.
So we're here and I'm going to take some more water samples. The water's a little bit different and it's kind of sandy at the bottom. So what we're going to do first is we're going to bring the camera closer and we're going to look exactly into the water and see if you can actually see the thing swimming around. So now we're just looking at the shore of the marsh where the sand is a little lighter color. You might be able to see some of the little life moving around under the water. And you really can. Look at all those guys swimming around. And this is exactly what we've been capturing and we're going to be bringing back in to look under the microscope. So we found a little pond snail. He's this little tiny shell right here at the end of my stick. I can even use my finger to show you. He is right there. Let me take him out and I'll put him on my hand. This is a pond snail. And if he will, we'll see if he'll actually move. He'd prefer to be under the water, so he's probably not going to move too much on my hand. Maybe if I put my hand in the water, maybe we can get him to move. I can see a couple Daphnia on my hand too. Oops, he's moving a little bit. He's looking around. The little antennas are coming out. He's moving. He's not sure. This doesn't feel like the regular pond bottom or marsh bottom. But he's, oops, there he is. Now the whole head is coming out. He's moving. He's got himself turned around. This is a pond snail. A pond snail eats the algae and the dead plants that have fallen into the water. He helps with decomposing. And there he goes. So we're walking over here toward the sump because we're going to go in down in the sump where the water's a little bit deeper. And I'm looking over by the fence and there's a turtle. Do you see that turtle? He looks quite dirty and he's probably made a big journey coming up from the sump and trying to get to the regular marsh. Well, this is a pet turtle, a red-eared slider turtle, although you can't see the red part right now because he is dirty. And we're going to have to actually rescue him. We're going to have to take him back into the nature center and give him to the Turtle and Tortoise Society rehabilitation group, and they will find a new home for him. Here in the marsh, he can't be here because the raccoons will kill him, and he's used to being fed, although he looks like he's been doing okay for a while. So we'll call up the rescue and see what they say.
Now we're down in the sump and I'm collecting some more water samples. And right behind me are the big pipes. Those are the pipes that pump the water from the sump into the marsh. I scooped up a bucket of the mosquito fish, and these are still young, but I wanted to show you what they look like. So they're swimming around and they'll eat some of the Daphnia and some of the ostracods that we showed you earlier, but they'll also eat the baby mosquitoes, and that's why they're here, and we want them to so that the mosquitoes don't become adults and fly up and bite anybody. No one likes to get bitten by a mosquito. We'll bring a mosquito fish into the lab and we'll look at that under the microscope.
So we came back into the nature center because we wanted to use the microscope. So here in my bucket, I have the little mosquito fish that we found in the sump. So I grabbed a petri dish, which is just a little plastic clear dish that we use for microscopes, and I scooped one out of the bucket. We're going to put him under the microscope, and then once I get him centered on the microscope, I'll turn on the light and Miss Susan will get the camera right up to the lens and we'll have a look at our mosquito fish.
Here's our mosquito fish. You can see the mouth is bringing the water in, and the fins and coming out the gills. That's his head. His eyes are closed right now. The light probably a little bright on his eyes. And then back to the tail. And oops, and that's what the mosquito fish looks like under the microscope.
Okay, the next thing we're going to look at, I have some algae here. And algae is plant life that grows under the water. And you can see this is a stringy algae, lots of little strings. I'm going to try to separate them out because under the microscope, these are going to look like a really dark clump of green stuck into my little pipette here. Let me get some more water, and I'm going to add some water to my algae to try to get it to separate a little bit so we can get a better look at it. There's some still stuck inside. I'm going to pull that right out. And then we're going to put this one under the microscope and see what it looks like.
So we're looking at the algae, and there's the little ostracod. Let's look around. There he goes. He looks like a little bean, doesn't he? And his legs kind of come out and filter the water to eat all the little things that are in the water. Anything that's small enough to get caught in his legs. And then swimming around him are a bunch of the Daphnia, or the water fleas. We're going to take a closer look at some of those.
So in this little jar, there's a whole lot of Daphnia. And I have a pipette, or a little eyedropper. So I squeeze the air out, and I can go in and try to aim and capture just the one that I'm looking for. And then I can look in my pipette, and I can actually see him swimming inside my tube. He's right there inside my tube. I don't know if you can see him, but he's swimming inside the tube, right closer to the front where my finger is. Then, when I have him inside my tube, I can put him in the Petri dish and make a nice little puddle for him to have like his own little swimming pool. And once I got him on this little Petri dish, I can put him under the microscope and we can take a closer look.
Here is the little Daphnia swimming around and kind of swimming in circles. And if you look carefully, at the one end is a little black tip. That's the eye. And at the other end, there's two bigger, blacker, almost black spots. Those are actually eggs that are inside of her. And we're going to actually increase the magnification. You're going to have an even closer look. So I'm going to turn the knob and increase the magnification, and you're going to be able to see the Daphnia get bigger. And if you look carefully, you'll be able to see inside of the Daphnia. The heart is beating and other parts of the insides are moving. Next we have the pond snail, and you can see the little snail bodies coming out. You can see the little tentacle, they kind of like antennas that come up for their eyes. And there's the foot. So the foot is the suction cup that helps it to hold on. So it's got to get itself flipped over in the Petri dish. But we're going to watch it for a little bit here because it's pretty cool. See both of those two eye tentacles? It's trying to find its way. It'll get itself, I'm sure. And it's quite bright with that light, so it's probably a little confused. Oh, there he goes. Got his shell on top of him now. That's good. He's reaching out and exploring some of that algae. Pulls ahead and then the shell catches up. The last thing we're going to look at is the mosquito pupa. The mosquito adult lays the eggs in the water, and then the larvae grow and eat and grow, and then when they're ready they turn into a pupa, and then they emerge as an adult mosquito. Just like how a caterpillar eats and grows and does a chrysalis and emerges as a butterfly.
So we just looked at some things under the microscope, and this picture is representing the Petri dish that we looked on under the microscope. And here's a child looking through the scope. So we looked at some algae and some Daphnia. These were the water fleas. And we looked at some other things too. We looked at the ostracod, which is the seed shrimp, and we looked at the mosquito pupa, remember? and some other plants. So why are they so important? They're just little tiny things in the water. Well, they're really important because they're food for other things. So for example, the Daphnia, ostracod, and mosquito larvae, they eat plants and sometimes even dead plants. They're like the cleanup crew. These little legs will filter through the water and grab every little piece of debris or little things that are floating by, and that's what they eat. So you have all these in the water. How's that good? Well, there's more animals that need to eat these. So here is my marsh water. This is the bottom of the marsh, and this is the top of the water, and this is the sky. So there's things under the water that need to eat those. And one of those things under the water are fish. Fish can eat all those tiny little specks. Remember when we saw them? They're just itty bitty tiny specks, and he can eat a lot of those. And also tadpoles. These are baby frogs, and they can eat a lot of the Daphnia, the ostracod, and all those little specks of stuff, including some plants. And then we have some bigger animals like our mallard duck. And the mallard duck usually sits on top, but it dives down and it grabs the plants on the bottom and eats those. And when it's eating those, a lot of times these guys are eating the algae. So you have the Daphnia, the ostracods, and the other little itty bitty things are eating the plants under the water. So when he goes down and grabs a bite, he actually eats some of them too, kind of not on purpose, but that's good protein for him. Other things that can eat those tiny little specks are like the diving beetle. And he goes up, grabs a bowl of air and goes down hunting, and he swims around and eats all those little specks, those little ostracods, Daphnia, and mosquito larvae. Another thing can eat things under the water is the baby dragonfly. The dragonfly doesn't have any wings and it lives underwater for a long time as a nymph. And the nymph can go around eating all those little things till it gets bigger. Then we're going to have someone in the air who eats some pretty small stuff. The dragonfly adult. He certainly can't eat a duck. And he can't go down under the water, so he can't grab things under the water. But as the mosquitoes change from their pupa and start to fly, then he can grab them. Or maybe the other things that are flying. And then the tadpoles, they grow up to be frogs. And frogs can swim in the water and they can be on the land too. Maybe he's going to eat a spider, take that long sticky tongue and grab that little spider that can walk on the water or on the land. He would, if he was a big frog and saw the dragonfly landing somewhere, maybe on a little bit of a plant, something over here, and he's a big frog, maybe he could eat a dragonfly. So all the animals are related by eating each other by size. And it all starts with the tiniest ones from under the microscope. Now we're going to go to the next picture, and here's the water of the marsh. And here's some more plants growing. And the plants get their energy from the sun. They don't have to eat anything else. But who's going to be in this water? Oh, we can have the great blue heron, and maybe he's eating a fish, or maybe he's eating the dragonfly larva. Maybe he's eating a frog. Maybe he's eating tadpoles. There's many things he can eat. Or maybe we have on the bottom the crayfish. Oh, and maybe the great blue heron will eat the crayfish too. That would be delicious. But the crayfish will be eating the tadpoles and the fish and the other plants and dead things on the bottom too. And on the land, maybe we have a raccoon. That raccoon might be hiding under this tree. That raccoon loves crayfish, so he would swim right in the water and get a crayfish. Or if he could catch a fish, or he could eat some plants. There are many things a raccoon can eat too. And then maybe we have a coyote. And maybe the coyote would go after the raccoon babies, but maybe the coyote would go after the ducklings. He's what we call a top predator. Nobody eats the coyote. He's not dinner for anyone else. And the heron, I don't know if anybody eats the heron. He's pretty big. I don't know that anybody eats him. And he's also very well equipped to fight with that. That bill of his is like a sword. It's hard and sharp and dangerous. So this is how the different animals in the marsh rely on each other. And it starts with the smallest things that we looked under the microscope to the next size, mediums, and then the big things. Now I want to think about how we fit into the food chain. So I'm talking about a chain, and a chain is where things are linked together. See, they're tied together, they're connected. And all of these animals are connected. So if the coyote eats a baby raccoon, he's also eating from before whatever the raccoon ate. And then the raccoon ate some eggs, or if he ate the crayfish, and the crayfish ate the dragonfly larva and some of the plants. And if the dragonfly larva ate some ostracods and some mosquito fish or mosquito larvae, kind of like the coyote eating the raccoon is eating all those animals too. They're all linked together. So some things are on the bottom of the food chain because everybody eats them, and some things are on the top of the food chain because not too many or no one eats them. Now what about people? People are on the top of the food chain. So all these things that got eaten, little animals and plants and animals and plants and animals and plants, and then the last one is one more chain link that we're going to be for the people, because nobody eats the people, but people can pretty much catch and eat just about anything they want because they're smart and they have weapons. So I wanted to finish off today with a poem from a book, and the book is called The Song of the Water Boatman. And the water boatman is a kind of insect that lives in the marsh. And I looked for some water boatmen while we were out looking to collect the samples. And they will be out a little bit later when it's a little bit warmer because they have to hatch and grow and the water's not quite warm enough for them yet. So the poem we're going to read today is called In the Depths of the Summer Pond. Here hang the algae, green and small, in the depths of the summer pond. Here floats a flea, waving antenna, that eats the algae, green and small, in the depths of the summer pond. So here we have the little water fleas of the Daphnia, and they're eating the algae. Here nods the nymph with the feathery gills that drinks the flea that eats the algae, green and small, in the depths of the summer pond. So here's the nymph. This looks a little different than a dragonfly nymph, but it's some kind of insect that just ate those. Here dives the bug, sleek and swift, that nabs the nymph and drinks the flea that eats the algae, green and small, in the depths of the summer pond. Here's the bug. He's going to get him. Here kicks the frog with golden eyes that gulps the bug, that nabs the nymph, that drinks the flea, that eats the algae, green and small, in the depths of the summer pond. Here comes the frog. So the frog is going to eat the bug. Here lurks the fish, wide of jaw, that swallows the frog, that gulps the bug, that nabs the nymph, that drinks the flea, that eats the algae, green and small, in the depths of the summer pond. Here comes the fish, and he's going to eat the frog. Here hunts the heron, queen of the pond, that spears the fish, that swallowed the frog, that gulped the bug, that nabbed the nymph, that drinks the flea, that eats the algae, green and small, in the depths of the summer pond. So the top of the food chain is the great blue heron. And sometimes when they eat fish, they use their bill like a knife and they literally stab it. That's pretty crazy. So all of those animals became part of the heron. That was the food chain. Well, I hope you enjoyed our lesson today on the food chain and all the tiny stuff in the water. That's the beginning of the food chain. Glad you could join us. See you next time.